Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight for the Palmdale General Plan Update virtual meeting. My name is Celeste Milam. I'm with Ariano Associates and part of the consultant team assisting the city with this project. Before we get started, we wanted to quickly go over some housekeeping items and instructions for participation during the meeting. Note that the meeting is being recorded and will be posted to the project website for future viewing. If you'd like to join the meeting via phone, please use the dial-in information that you see on the screen. We have both an English and Spanish audio line available for you to use. In addition to tonight's meeting, we also have another opportunity for input through our online briefing book and survey. So if you haven't already, we would encourage you to please visit the project website, palmdale2045.org, and take the survey, which will be live until February 15th. Get the next slide, please. We will have a Spanish interpretation for our meeting tonight available. So to enable that feature for the meeting, you have your control panel on the bottom. There's a little interpretation globe. You can click on that, click the language Spanish that you'd like to hear. And then to hear the interpreted language only, Spanish only, you can hit the original audio button. Next slide, please. Simran, oh, thank you. Tonight, we'll be pausing throughout the presentation to take questions and comments from the public. And there's two ways that you can provide your input. If you'd like to participate verbally, you can use the raise hand feature. It's a little hand icon at the bottom where your control panel is. You can press this button to raise your hand and then you press it again to lower your hand. If you're joining by phone, you can use *9 on your phone line to raise your hand. At the designated stopping points that we'll have for Q&A throughout the program, if you raise your hand, we'll call you by name, ask you to unmute yourself, and then you can provide your comment. The second way you can provide a comment is a written comment using the Q&A function. Again, that's a button that's located on your control panel at the bottom of your screen. Click on the button, a text box will pop up, and you can type in your comment and question there. And we'll be reading those questions out loud throughout those designated stopping points in the presentation. Please note that all questions and comments will be monitored by the project team. So we ask that you please refrain from using profanity or offensive language in your written or verbal comments. And then finally, our last slide is for technical support. If you do find yourself having any technical difficulties on Zoom, please reach out to us via email or text line. The email is cmilam@arianoassociates.com, or you can text us at 661-241-8994, and we'll get right back to you and try to help you resolve any tech issues that you may be having and help you participate in the meeting. So with that, I will turn it over to Carlene Saxton with the City of Palmdale to officially kick off and open the meeting.
Great, thank you, Celeste, and welcome everyone. We at the City of Palmdale, on behalf of the community, our council, and our city management, want to say thank you for attending tonight and being a huge part in the future of this city. We're very excited to engage with you all, get your feedback. We're about midway through the project, and so there's lots of work that's taken place and lots of work that still has to be done. So thank you for being with us. I'm Carlene Saxton, the Director of Economic and Community Development here at the City of Palmdale. We also have Megan Taggart, who is our Planning Manager. She's online, and Ben Fiss, who's our Senior Planner and working on this project. So thank you again. And with that, I will hand it over to our wonderful consultant team.
Thank you, Carlene, and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We appreciate you taking the time to be here and to provide your feedback on this very important project for the city, which is the update of the general plan. My name is Simran Malhotra. I'm a principal of Ramey and Associates. We are leading a multidisciplinary team for this project. With me, I have Melissa Stark, and you'll hear from her later on in this presentation as well. As Celeste mentioned, this meeting is also being live streamed on YouTube on the Palmdale 2045 channel. It's also being recorded, and the recording will be available starting tomorrow on the YouTube channel. We had previously met with some of you over the last couple of years, first when we were discussing and learning about the issues and opportunities that face the city. And then we met last summer when we presented the land use alternatives. We are here today to share with you the results of what we heard from you with the preferred land use plan, and to confirm that we heard you correctly, and to see if you have any additional questions or comments that we can answer. The agenda for today is I'll provide a brief overview of the overall process and review how we got here, how the alternatives were developed, and how they led to the development of the preferred plan. We'll also spend some time describing the preferred alternative and its elements in a little bit more detail. We'll also pause for questions during the meeting, during the presentation. At those times, we'll prefer to answer questions directly related to the presentation. If you have comments besides specific questions that you have, please hold them till the end. There'll be an opportunity for you to share and ask those verbally at that time. We will also ask you to participate in some brief polls along the way, and we'll start with the first set of those questions now. Melissa, did you want to ask the first poll?
Yeah, thanks, Simran, and thanks everyone for joining us. We're really happy that you're here. If you're watching online, you can actually there's still an opportunity for you to join the live meeting and respond to these polls. For folks who are in the Zoom meeting with us, I'm going to launch our first poll. It should pop up on your screen now. There's actually a series of 3 questions, which I'm going to read out now, along with your optional responses. So the first question asks, do you live and or work in Palmdale? And your options are live, work, live and work, or none of the above. If you continue scrolling down, you're going to see the second question, which asks, if you live in Palmdale, how long have you lived here? Your options are 1 year or less, 2 to 5 years, 6 to 10 years, 11 to 20 years, 21 to 30 years, 31 years plus, or I don't live in Palmdale. If you continue scrolling down, you're going to see the third question, part of this poll, which asks, what is your age range? Options are under 18, 18 to 24, 25 to 34, 35 to 44, 45 to 64, and 65 and older. We'll pause here for a few seconds until we get majority of responses, and then we will share the results so you all can see. And if you haven't already, please select your responses to those 3 questions, and we'll share them in just a moment. Okay, we're going to close the poll now and share the results. You should see the results on your screen now. It looks like 31% of folks live in Palmdale, 26% work in Palmdale, 17% live and work, and 26% are none of the above in terms of the first question. Moving down to the second question, 17% of folks, the highest number of responses have lived in Palmdale between 21 and 30 years, followed by 14% that have lived in Palmdale for 31 years or more. 11 to 20 years, about 12% of folks. 6 to 10 years, about 10% of folks, and 2 to 5 years, 2% of folks. We also have 45% that do not live in Palmdale. That is our highest number of folks here in the meeting. Continuing to scroll down in terms of age range, highest number of folks in our meeting right now are between 45 and 64 years old, followed by 25 to 34 at 19%. And then the last 2 are split for 14% at 35 to 44 and 65 or older. I'm going to stop sharing these results. If the screen is still showing on your window, feel free to click the X in the upper right-hand corner. And I'll pass that back over to Simran.
Thank you, Melissa. So let's get started with the presentation. First, I wanted to share what a general plan is. And it's a document that establishes what a city's long-term vision is for its future. It includes how a community will change and grow and what the community's values and priorities are for the next 25 years and beyond. It is essentially a roadmap for a city's future. It contains goals, policies, and implementing actions that provide city staff and city commissions and council direction in their future decision making. And every city in California is required to have a general plan. As Carlene mentioned earlier, we are about midway through this process. It's a 6-step process. We are at the beginning of the 4th, end of the third step. We started about 2 years ago. We initiated the project by learning about the city and creating a vision and guiding principles that is steering what goes into the plan. Last summer, we reviewed alternatives for land use, and that feedback has now been refined and is being reviewed by the community through this meeting and the ongoing survey. We've also been working with the General Plan Advisory Committee, which was established by the City Council at the outset of the process, on developing the policies that will be needed to make the desired plan happen, and then we'll conduct the technical studies needed to make sure that it works. We'll then prepare the plan document itself, which will again be presented to the public for their review and comments, and the Planning Commission and City Council will also review before it's adopted. Through this entire process, we have had input from the community at various stages. We have met with over 800 residents in person through this process and reached several thousand more online. And we've reached out to get the word out about this project through multiple ways. We have had advertisements in various local newspapers and magazines. There's been social media, social media input. There's been e-blast through our website, and we've also had conversations and radio spots on Spanish radio stations. As I noted earlier, we've been working with the GPAC, and several of those members are in the audience. So I wanted to acknowledge that they are here and thank them again for their time and effort that they've spent working with us on this project. The next few slides provide some background on the existing land uses and the current general plan. Land uses can be classified in several broad categories: residential, non-residential, public, and institutional. Residential uses are generally single-family, multifamily. They can also include row houses, duplexes, triplexes, etc. Non-residential uses include retail, restaurants, hotels, office, industrial, and business park type uses. And public and institutional uses include city services, hospitals, schools, and parks. This map shows the distribution of existing land uses of what's already been built today in Palmdale. As you can see on the map, we have Plant 42 in this location. There is industrial uses surrounding Plant 42. There are some agricultural uses shown in the blue here, in the light blue here, adjacent to Plant 42. We also have some protected open space on the southwest portion, and there are some mining and quarry uses in the southeast portion. And the predominant use, though, is shown in the gray, which is vacant land, and that's almost 2/3 of the city. The next dominant use is shown in the light pale yellow all across the city, and that's the residential, single-family residential use. The general plan land use map establishes a land use designation for every property, including those that are vacant. It says what uses are allowed, where in the city these uses can be located, and how much of that use can be built. The map is supported by goals and policies that are contained in the land use element. Other elements also support the land use recommendations. For example, the infrastructure element considers if there are adequate services available in an area where development is anticipated. The parks and open space element evaluates how to connect existing and future parks and open space to where residential uses are planned. This map is the current general plan map. As you can see, the major uses shown in the bright yellow are single family residential. The bright pink is manufacturing type uses, and the bright blue are business park employment related uses. The maroon color here on the side is where the quarries and the mining uses are designated. The next few slides provide some additional background context for the development of the alternatives. Based on what we have heard through this process, the general plan team prepared and refined vision themes. These 10 themes are meant to provide a framework to guide future decision making. These 10 themes are broad and they address all aspects of life in Palmdale. I'll just highlight a couple of these here. One of the major vision themes is the desire to create a vibrant downtown in Palmdale. Another is to diversify the local economy with more job options and to provide more housing options for residences of all income and ability levels. Another key vision theme is tied to preserving the city's natural setting, and then, of course, to create a safe and healthy city that's welcoming to all. These vision themes guided the development of the alternatives and now are also have guided the development of the preferred plan that we'll be sharing shortly. I'd also like to note that during our analysis, we considered which area of the city should be preserved and where growth should go. We also looked at other constraints such as which parts of the city there is infrastructure available when we established where growth might go. So the two circles in red that you see are the areas of change, and the rest of the city is either areas that are already developed and we want to preserve, or there are areas that are vacant and we don't anticipate growth occurring there in the next 25 or so years. Based on that analysis, we prepared a land use framework map, which contains some elements that were consistent across all three alternatives. And I won't walk through this map here because we'll be presenting it again a little bit later in the presentation. The three alternatives which you see here side by side varied by a few elements. There was a different mix of employment uses and where those were located in the areas of change, what the densities of housing, residential, new housing was being proposed, where the medical and education districts were located, and the amount of regional commercial uses. When we presented these alternatives last summer, we had extensive engagement around these. We had over 10 focus groups. We had another workshop. We had a survey that was ongoing for several weeks. We had pop-up events as well as study sessions with the Planning Commission and City Council. We received over 800 responses, and over 4,000 folks reviewed the materials that was presented. Through that extensive process, the results showed that overall there was a strong preference for alternative 3, and the reasons for that was there was a preference for the mix of employment uses and the types of jobs that were created with those employment uses. There was also a preference for the housing choices, the flexibility that provided, and how it led to the less of a need for travel, so a reduction in vehicle miles traveled on an individual basis. There were elements of other alternatives that were also liked, and these were considered in the development of the preferred plan that we'll share shortly. I'll pause now and see if there are any questions from any of the attendees, and I'm not seeing any. So let's see, Melissa, I think we also have a poll here that we can pose to our attendees here.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and give me 1 second. Okay, so you should see the second poll up on your screen now. This has 2 questions. The first question asks, how many general plan related meetings and events have you attended? First option is none. This is my first meeting. Then your next option is 1 to 2 meetings, followed by 3 to 4 meetings, and lastly 5 or more meetings. If you scroll down, you'll see the second question, which asks, how did you hear about this meeting? And options are Billboard, Facebook or Instagram, Nextdoor, Palmdale Magazine, Palmdale Connections, direct email, flyer, website, radio, or other. If you are watching on YouTube and you'd like to respond to these polls, there's a link in the description to join the meeting live, where you can respond to these polls and ask questions. We'll wait for just a few more seconds while folks put their responses in, and then again, we'll share the results with everyone.
It's helpful for us to learn about how you all heard about this meeting, so we know what's effective in getting the word out and what are other ways we can reach out to the community to get additional feedback.
All right, we're going to close this poll. And you should now see results on your screen. For the first question, 42% of folks responded that this is their first meeting, followed by 29% who have attended 1 to 2 meetings prior. 23% of folks have attended 3 to 4 meetings, and 6% have attended 5 or more meetings. In terms of how folks heard about this meeting, 46% heard through a direct email, 31% heard from another source, 4% from the website, 15% from Palmdale Connections, and 2% both for Nextdoor or Palmdale Magazine. I just closed this poll. If you're still seeing it on your screen, feel free to click on the X in the upper right-hand corner.
Thank you, Melissa. Before I describe the land use designations plan in the general plan, I did want to talk about a little bit about how the general plan is. It's a planning document, and it is a long-term project. It's the city's way of establishing what might happen, but the city is not regulating, or excuse me, is not actually building the general plan. It's any building would happen by individual property owners based on their own interests and time frame. What the city does is in the general plan establish what can be built and where it might go and how much of it can be built. So let me go back here for a second. So in the general plan, to establish what can be built, we have created land use designation for different types of land uses. And these designations cover what we want to see built in the city. Some of these are already in the current general plan and are permitted, but there are new types of development that we are proposing to be built in the city. And I'll just walk you through these briefly. There are several residential designations that are being proposed. Most of these are currently allowed in the city. So equestrian residential, low density residential, single family residential, 1 through 4 are all density ranges that are today permitted in the general plan and in the city. Densities at or residential development at the highest densities, multifamily construction is also allowed within Palmdale. We have introduced two new designations that brings in and allows for new housing types, such as row houses, courtyard homes, garden apartments, smaller scale multifamily, what's called missing middle housing, those type of housing products which are currently not permitted in the general plan or the city's zoning code. We have also introduced new mixed-use designations, and mixed-use designations allow for mixing residential uses with non-residential uses, and these can happen on the same parcel. You can have either retail or commercial with residential above, that's called vertical mixed use, or you could have retail in the front and residential behind, and a project like that would be called a horizontal mixed use project. We have some examples later on where you can see that a little bit more clearly as to what that might look like. In terms of commercial designations, several of the existing general plan designations are being carried through into the new general plan. Those include neighborhood commercial, regional commercial designations. We've also introduced new designation, visitor commercial, which is oriented towards uses that can build on the presence of the 14 freeway and attract those who are traveling on that freeway to the uses in Palmdale. So, and also for the short-term employees that visit Plant 42 and the related aerospace industry. So hotels would be a part of that designation. Employment flex designation is intended to be, as it sounds, focused on creating employment. So light industrial type uses, business park uses, which create more jobs for current and future Palmdale residents. Aerospace industrial is a current designation as well, and that's focused on the types of uses that support the aerospace industry and the Air Force at Plant 42. And it also includes uses that some of the government contractors, aerospace contractors, who are already located in and around Plant 42 and future such contractors as well. The mineral resource extraction designation is focused on just that. It's an existing use. And then finally, two new designations, health and wellness and education flex. And I'll describe those in a little bit more detail later on in the presentation. There's also a specific plan designation that essentially covers all the existing specific plans in the city. I'll pause here for any questions related to the land use designations, and I am not seeing any. So, Melissa, did you want to run our poll here?
Yes. We're going to launch our third poll, which has one question that asks, do you agree with the addition of new land use designations that allow for different types of housing, mixed-use development, health and wellness, and education flex uses? Your options are yes, agree with all, no, agree with none, some but not all, or no preference. We'll pause here just for a moment and wait for everyone to submit their responses. Again, if you're watching online and you'd like to respond, you can click the link to join the meeting live in the YouTube description and respond to these polls, as well as have the option to submit questions. If you haven't already, please submit your response. We'll just wait for another few seconds and then close the poll. Okay, you should see the results up on your screen. 78% of folks said yes, agree with all. 16% said some, but not all, and 6% said no preference.
So we do have one question whenever you're ready.
Yep, go ahead.
We have a hand raised from Shayna Winkelstein, and she also submitted a question. Her question in writing is, some of us built according to the old general plan. What happens to those of us, for example, who built industrial and now your zoning says residential? Are you going to make us a cutout so that we can continue our original use?
And that's a really good question, Shayna, and thank you for attending today and submitting your question as well. The answer to your question is that the general plan, if you build according to the old general plan and there's a new designation for your property, your current use can continue as is. It would become non-conforming, but it would allow to continue till you choose to not continue with that use.
And then we have one more question. What kind of zoning designation can be used for storing trucks?
Again, that's a good question, and it's very detailed. The general plan designations are broad. Following the adoption of the general plan, the city will be updating the zoning ordinance and the zoning map, and at that time, the exact uses permitted per zoning designation will be established. Broadly, storing trucks is a use that would fall under the industrial land use designation. Okay, let's keep going here. And now I'd like to present the preferred alternative. Again, a quick reminder of the land use framework. The land use framework covers the entire city. It includes both the areas of change and the areas that are to be preserved. So very briefly, we have downtown in the central portion of the city. We have medical districts, regional commercial uses, employment uses, and then mixed residential uses along Palmdale. We also have village centers and multi-use centers, which I'll talk about a little bit later on in the presentation. So this composite map shows the entire city, and this is the preferred plan. And I'll walk through more specifically as to what the locations are. And as I said, these this map shows areas that are not changing as well as those that are. The major elements are downtown, which is located around the transit area station and the location of high-speed rail station. The plan for this area was recently adopted by the City Council as the transit area specific plan. It essentially falls between Avenue Q and Palmdale, Technology on Boulevard, Palmdale Boulevard, the 14th Freeway and 10th Street East. That quadrant is where downtown is anticipated to be. There are two health and wellness districts, one around the existing Palmdale Regional Medical Center, and the second around Kaiser Permanente on Avenue S and 47th Street. There are two education districts on Palmdale Boulevard, one around the current Antelope Valley College, Community College Extension location on 25th Street, and then the second around adjacent to the Palmdale Aerospace Academy on 32nd Street. The regional commercial uses are located around the Antelope Valley Mall. And there's a mix of employment uses around Plant 42, and those are shown in the light pink color here and the gray as well. There are mixed uses on both sides. Palmdale Boulevard is anticipated to be a mixed-use corridor, so we would see both vertical mixed use and horizontal mixed use uses along that length all the way from the 14th Freeway to 47th Street. And a mix of different residential densities are anticipated on both sides of Palmdale Boulevard between Avenue Q and Avenue R. And there are village centers and retail nodes across the city. And there's a map later on which will show those a little bit more clearly. I wanted to note a few other things. One, we have not shown actual locations for parks because we don't want to indicate where those might be on any specific parcel, which is owned privately. We'll be showing general recommended locations on a separate map as we develop the general plan document. Secondly, the village centers are located in areas with residential around. In some cases, the surrounding neighborhoods are covered by a specific plan, so the rationale for those locations is not as obvious. Let's see. This slide shows the comparison of the area and what the changes in the area for each designation is, and compares the current general plan to the preferred land use plan. While the change in the area is not that different, but the pattern and intensity of land uses has different implications and results in our metrics. These two show almost the same amount of commercial and industrial uses and about the same amount of residential uses, but it has a very dramatic impact on some of the metrics that we've been evaluating. So as you can see, the number of households or units that could be produced under the new general plan is much higher than the current general plan. And that's also the case with the number of jobs. The new land use alternative reduces vehicle miles traveled as it encourages residents to walk and use bicycles more compared to the land use patterns today. And as a result, it also reduces the annual household costs for transportation, energy, and water use significantly. I'll pause here for any questions.
So Simran, we have 3 questions and then a hand raise. So we'll start with the written questions. The first one is there going to be a hospital built, from Chuck Powell?
As I noted earlier, the general plan the land use plan plans for areas where medical uses would go, but it's not. A new hospital is not part of the general plan. A new hospital being built is not a part of the general plan.
Next question is from Scott S. Could you find a new site for the Palmdale dump owned by Waste Management? And can the current site be rezoned to not allow the dump to exist there? It is located very close to the residential zoning area and could be much better placed.
Thank you, Scott. That's a good question as well. The landfill is an existing use, and I'll actually ask Carlene to provide some additional information on that. But since it's an existing use, a change in that use is something we can share that comment with the city council, and it would be a policy direction from the council to just move that use away from that location.
Sure,
We'll make a note of that comment.
And I can just add that the city currently has what's called a hauling agreement with Waste Management, and it's specifically tied to that location. We go through periodic updates of that hauling agreement to ensure that the services that they provide are a benefit to the community. I believe we're going to be doing that in the next year or so as well. So feel free to contribute your input on that once it comes up. But as Simran said, it is an existing use and a service that is provided to the community in regards to waste disposal.
Thank you, Carlene. Let's see.
Next question, why is the high desert corridor not shown on any of the maps?
Thank you. Again, the high desert corridor is the freeway portion of the high desert corridor is future transportation facility, which is the exact alignment of which hasn't been established yet, and which is why we haven't shown it on the land use map. As we are working through the transportation recommendations, we will show those in a map. That's a good point that you raised.
And then the last written question we have right now is parts of the city of Palmdale are in the Air Force Air Installation Compatible Use Zone. Have you taken these zones into consideration in reference to the zoning in these areas?
Yeah, again, Shana, that's a very good question, and yes, we have taken those into consideration, and as we are getting input from the community from you all on the alternatives, that's something we'll look at more closely as well as we make any refinements to the preferred plan and go to the council and planning commission for their review.
Do you want to take any more questions right now, Simran, or do you want to wait till the next stopping?
Sure, we can take a couple of more questions and I can switch back to the land use map if that's helpful.
Okay, we have 2 hands raised and I tried to go in order here. I think the first one was Shana. I'm not sure if you have another question, but you can go ahead and unmute yourself. Oh, hand's gone. Okay, I think we answered her question. The second hand raised is Zakaya Anson. You can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hello, hi. I have a question in regards to you stating that with the new plan, the hopes is to have more options for bicycling or walking. Will there be more jobs just in that downtown area that would allow for this, with being able to live closer to where you work?
Thank you for your questions. Okay, the new jobs are planned for in not just downtown, but in the areas north of downtown and along Avenue Q and north of that, and going all the way up. You can see on the map, all the colors on the map that are the bright pink and the gray are anticipated to be areas where jobs may be located.
And if I may just add, just a clarification, that all areas of the city are, I guess, hopefully going to provoke some kind of job creation. So while we have planned for commercial or industrial or some kind of mixed use through the land use process, those projects that are being constructed will incentivize some sort of job creation, as well as if it is a commercial facility. So just keep that in mind as well as we're looking at this.
Thank you, Carlene. And I should note that not just those areas, there are village centers with commercial uses that are proposed across the city, which would have, which would also be areas for jobs.
And we have one more question, Simran. It's from Wilson de la Cruz. Is there any flexibility on the land use from agricultural to multi-unit residential?
I'm not exactly sure what's being asked. Wilson, would you want to unmute yourself and ask your question live?
Should be unmuted.
Celeste, how do you?
He just unmuted himself.
Mm-hmm.
You can unmute yourself, Wilson, and go ahead.
He's on the phone.
Yeah, might be having a little technical, but maybe he can expand in the Q&A. We can come back to that question.
Or they can also email the general plan email, and we can always reach out and see any additional questions to provide some clarification if they would like. And I believe that contact information will be available at the end, or it's available on our city website.
Okay. Let's see. We can answer one more question and then we can move on, and we can always come back to these.
Okay, we have one more in the Q&A. It says, I don't see a lot of green space. Is there a plan to increase the green space in the densely populated area of Palmdale?
Yeah, again, that's a really good question. And as I noted earlier, the goal is to have additional park space that meets the city's parks goal, an open space goal that's established. It's 5 acres per 1,000 residents. We haven't shown park space on individual properties yet if the city doesn't already own that property. And that's the reason why you're not seeing additional green on the map. But we will be recommending general locations where additional park space should be provided based on funding, availability of funding, and availability of land for purchase. I'd also note that new development, especially multifamily development, will be required to provide open space within the developments for their residents, so that residents have access to open space right where they live, and in addition to the park space that's provided close by. Okay. Melissa, did you want to launch the poll here, and then we can come back to some of these other questions?
Yeah, thanks, Simran. We are launching our fourth poll, which includes 2 questions. The first question asks, do you agree with the vision for village centers throughout Palmdale?
Melissa?
Yeah.
Was this a poll for later? Maybe.
We'll go ahead and do it now. Sorry, folks.
Yeah. Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah. So I'll just reread this question. Do you agree with the vision for village centers throughout Palmdale? Would these types of uses be acceptable in a village center in your neighborhood? Answers are yes, no, no preference. Simran will walk us through those shortly. This will just be a precursor for everyone. The following question asks, do you agree with the locations identified for village centers throughout Palmdale? Again, we'll walk through those shortly, but your options are yes, no, and no preference. All right, we are sharing results from this poll. We did have it up a little bit early, but it looks like the majority of folks generally agree with the vision for village centers as well as the location for village centers in Palmdale. And then just a reminder for folks, if you're watching online and you'd like to be able to join in and participate in the polls or submit questions, you can still join the meeting live by clicking the link in the YouTube description. Okay.
Okay. Let's get into a little bit more detail on some of the elements of the preferred land use alternative, starting with the village centers. You just answered some questions about it, but maybe you may have slightly different responses after you learn more about them. So village centers are intended to be a place for residents in the surrounding neighborhoods to go to for their daily needs. These can also have residential uses, possibly senior housing, and these can be in a vertical or horizontal mixed-use format. These can also have areas for public services, plazas and courtyards that are accessible to everyone and are often to be located near schools, and these are connected to the adjoining neighborhood with pedestrian and bicycle facilities. These centers are smaller and more walkable than the multi-use centers. The example in the map around here, as you can see, there's single family uses all around, and then there's commercial uses right in the heart, which allows for folks to go there, walk there, or bike there for their daily needs. These images show what the village centers might look like. You could have mixed use in a vertical format. As you can see in this building on the top right corner, you have retail on the ground floor, and then the upper floor has residential. Or you could have it in a horizontal, the mix of uses in a horizontal format where you have retail. It's a little bit hard to see in this image, but there's retail in the far back on the main street. There's retail with office uses behind it in this brick building. And then there's standalone residential uses behind this, and then that is adjacent to the existing single-family neighborhoods. There are also the possibility for creating gathering spaces for in a retail setting for residents to use and enjoy. There are 12 village centers that are anticipated. Some of these are building on existing commercial nodes. Others are future locations once residential development actually has been achieved. Usually retail comes in after the residential has been constructed. There are also 5 multi-use nodes that are being proposed, and the difference between a village center and a multi-use node is that a multi-use node is like a village center, but it is a bigger version of it. There are more uses. There are some uses that might be destinations for residents from across the city and not just the surrounding neighborhood. The goal with both the multi-use nodes and the village center is to create complete neighborhoods where residents can walk or bike to these areas easily. This map shows those locations more clearly. The black circles are where village centers are proposed, either in an existing locations or in the future, and the black squares are where the multi-use nodes are. Again, they may have something more than the typical day-to-day uses. This node here, for example, is adjacent to, the Pear Blossom node has some regional commercial type uses as well, which would be an attraction for a larger area than just the surrounding residential neighborhoods. Here is an example of a village center, and which shows how such a center may be designed. It contains both elements of a standalone residential uses in the back here with townhomes, which are next to the surrounding single-family residential. And then there are some mixed-use buildings as well, which are located along the major arterial streets. In a mixed-use setting, there are plazas and courtyards with neighborhood serving retail. So Melissa, maybe we can relaunch the same poll and see if we get a different answer this time.
Yeah, so we're going to relaunch that same poll, and feel free to enter in your response. We can compare results from the earlier launch to this one. Again, it's asking, do you agree with the vision for village centers throughout Palmdale? Would these types of uses be acceptable in a village center in your neighborhood? And the options are yes, no, or no preference. And if you scroll down, the second question asks, do you agree with the locations identified for village centers throughout Palmdale? And your options again are yes, no, or no preference. We'll pause here just for another second or two. If you haven't already, please submit your response and we'll share with everyone momentarily. Okay, we're going to go ahead and close this poll and share the results. So our last round of this question, we had 74% say yes, 7% say no, and 19% say no preference. This time around, we have 89% say yes for the first question, 4% say no, and 6% say no preference. and that's in terms of the vision for village centers and if they'd be acceptable in your neighborhood. Responses to the second question, asking if you agree with the locations identified for village centers. The last round we had 67% say yes, 7% say no, and 26% say no preference. This time around, we have 79% responding yes, 4% responding no, and 17% responding no preference in terms of the locations identified for village centers throughout Palmdale. So we've closed that out now, and if you still see the screen, the poll screen on your screen, you can click the X in the upper right-hand corner, and it'll pop up when we do our next round of polls.
Okay, let's keep going. The next element of the preferred alternative we wanted to discuss is the 2 health and wellness districts. As I mentioned, there are 2 locations for this district. One is near or around the Palmdale Regional Medical Center and Palmdale Boulevard and 10th Street West. This is about a 200-acre location, or this location is about 200 acres. The next location is around the Kaiser Permanente on Avenue S and 45th Street, and that's a smaller location, about 20 acres in size. The goal for this designation is to provide for a mix of public and private medical uses, so medical offices, medical facilities, and support facilities, and these would be located in a campus-like setting. So again, it would have amenities for employees as well as the visitors who are there to take advantage or use those particular facilities. Medical-related research and development facilities could also be located here, and another use that would be permitted is supportive retail, so restaurants, coffee shops, and other similar retail uses that are suitable in and around near medical use. This site plan shows a portion of the district adjacent to the Regional Medical Center, and it shows medical offices in the blue area here. You can have medical uses, R&D type uses, as well as some retail along the ground floor. It also has a walkable campus-like environment with landscaping and open space that is available for the employees as well as the visitors to use. There is also an opportunity for including areas or facilities for vocational training related to the medical use. So to create the pipeline from going for the youth in Palmdale today, getting trained in the kind of medical services and medical technology type for the medical technology type jobs that are needed right here, and then being able to work in the medical facilities that are already here and or might be built in the future. With that, I'll pause for any questions related to the Health and Wellness District.
We do not have any questions right now related to that.
Okay. Melissa, did you want to run our poll?
Yes. So we're launching the 5th poll. This has 2 questions. The first question asks, do you agree with the vision for the Health and Wellness District? Your options are yes, no, no preference. If you scroll down, the second question asks, do you agree with the locations identified for the Health and Wellness District? And again, your options are yes, no, and no preference. We'll pause here just for a minute while everyone submits their responses and then share the results.
Besides these 2 poll questions, we wanted to know if you thought that the areas that we have designated for the health and wellness districts are large enough for the kind of uses you think might happen there. At our last GPAC meeting where we presented the preferred alternative, for example, we heard that some of the GPAC members thought that we needed larger areas, especially in the health and wellness district located around the Kaiser facility on Avenue S. If you have thoughts on that, we'd love to hear those. If you wanted to raise your hand or type it in the Q&A, we can share those with everyone.
Yeah. We are sharing responses to this poll question now. As you can see on your screen, 85% of folks responded yes in terms of agreeing with the vision for the health and wellness district. 2% responded no, and 13% responded with no preference. For the second question, 77% responded yes in terms of the locations identified for the health and wellness district. 8% responded with no, and 15% responded with no preference.
Okay, thank you, Melissa. I do see a couple of comments about the health and wellness district. So, Celeste, did you want to?
Sure. The first one is a comment from Chuck Powell. It says, I would urge the board to make it a requirement that a new hospital be built as part of the 2045 Palmdale General Plan. With the influx of people coming to the Palmdale area, this would definitely be warranted. And then the second one is a question from Suzanne Reyna. With so much growth, how are we going to meet the needs of our citizens with healthcare when we only have one hospital? Will Kaiser grow here, or do we need to look at bringing in another company? If Palmdale Regional is at its peak with no room, what will we do?
Thank you, Celeste. The answer to those questions is that the general plan acknowledges and the city acknowledges that there is the need for additional health facilities in the city, which is why we have designated these areas in the city for additional medical facilities. The city is continuing to work with both Kaiser and other medical providers, as you know, to learn about their expansion plans and also to see what the city can do to support the growth of those facilities. There's also, of course, supportive uses, medical uses that are located along other portions of the city, especially along Palmdale Boulevard. Those will continue in those particular locations and may even grow as the population of Palmdale grows. But those are very good questions, and we'll be sharing those with the City Council when we present to them.
That is it for now.
Okay, great. Let's see. The last element we wanted to discuss is the education districts. And the education districts, what we've heard from the community during the engagement we've done over the last couple of years is the desire to see higher education uses in Palmdale. There is a need for students when they graduate from high school and want to go to college. There are not as many opportunities for them to continue their education in Palmdale unless they, besides the Antelope Valley Community College. while the city cannot single-handedly bring in a four-year college, the general plan is continuing to explore areas for more vocational type uses, trade schools, other satellite campuses to locate in Palmdale. And the approach that has been taken is to designate two areas in the city, one adjacent on to Palmdale Boulevard and 25th Street around the current AV Extension campus, and the second further east on adjacent to the Aerospace Academy location. And the intent is that educational facilities could locate in these areas. The Palmdale High School campus is already is located adjacent to one of the districts, and with the AV College campus and then the Palmdale High School, there's synergy of education type uses in that location. Those would be the primary uses that are permitted here. There could also be some secondary uses, such as supportive retail, office, as well as housing. The second location, which is adjacent to the Aerospace Academy, could have vocational schools, again tied to the mission of the Aerospace Academy to train students in the STEM fields, and then have locations for vocational training for our high school students and create a pipeline to the jobs that are already existing in Palmdale with the presence of Plant 42 and supporting facilities. This site plan, again, is an example that shows how such a district might develop and connect Palmdale High School with AV College with complementary uses. It could also contain retail and housing that is compatible and supportive of the surrounding neighborhoods. And these images show, the images around the site plan show the kind of uses we envision and the type of environments we envision might be created. With that, again, we'll pause for questions. Celeste, you're muted.
Oh, sorry about that. We do have one question from Mike Ortiz, and he asks, will there be any schools being built or reconstruction on most of them, because there's a lot of old schools out here?
Yeah, thank you for your question, Mike. That's a really good question. We have, since the start of this project, been coordinating with the various school districts in that have schools in Palmdale, the West Side School District, the Palmdale School District, and they are aware of our plans, and they, based on the growth projected in the general plan, they will be evaluating their facilities plans for the future and build new schools as needed.
We have another, this is a comment from Paul Dilger. It says, please consider incentivizing applicable new businesses within the educational district to offer internships to students. This can also be applicable to internship within our village centers.
Yeah, Paul, that's a really good question. You know, internship, I think, is a good way to encourage our young residents to learn learn how the real world works and how they can get the experience they need for being self-sufficient and move on to other full-time employment. So we'll certainly make a note of that and include that as something that the city can help support and create programs for internships and job training to help with just what you mentioned.
And I would just add to that, we actually have a community programs division at the city that specifically works on that. And I'm happy to provide our contact information for that individual. Her name is Trish Jones, and it's tjones@cityofpalmdale.org. And she is leading the way in connecting people, students to those internships throughout the city.
Looks like that's all the questions we have right now related to the educational districts.
Okay. So actually now we can open it up for general questions that folks have. That's the end of the presentation. We can always go back to any slide we have. I'm going to stop sharing, I think, or I can go back to, I'm going to stop sharing for now.
We do have a few general questions if you want to take them.
Mm-hmm.
You ready? Okay. The first one is what is Palmdale doing to increase and accelerate economic growth and improve infrastructure?
Sure, I'm happy to field that one.
Thank you, Carlene.
Sure. So we're actually very excited, even in the time that we are in with COVID. We are doing quite a bit here at the city in the planning division, economic development, and working with our community programs division in regards to some federal funding to help retain the local businesses we have, get them some grants to keep their lights on and continue business, as well as to bring new business into the city. One of the things specifically to speak to infrastructure, the city is working with Los Angeles County on an application for what's called EIFD, Enhanced Infrastructure Financing Districts. This essentially allows the city to work with the county to put some infrastructure in place that can be paid over time. It's pretty complicated, but it is something that we are doing as a city in collaboration with the county to try to get those much needed infrastructure improvements to not have them burden specific development within our city. So those are just a couple of highlights. Our city website has a lot of the other ones that are going on, and I'm happy to reach out to anybody who wants to talk about that in a little bit more detail.
Thank you, Carlene. And I'll also add that the general plan will have economic development element, which will also outline goals and policies for continuing the great work the city is already doing, and possibly suggest some additional actions for the city to follow in the future to accelerate economic growth in the city.
Okay, our next question is there any plan to close all the liquor stores on Palmdale Boulevard and create more appropriate spaces?
That's a good question. I think that's a very detailed question that the general plan can only answer at a very high level. The city currently has separation requirements for liquor stores. Carlene, you may have to help me out here as to what the distance requirement actually is, but there are limits to where liquor stores can be located and how far apart from each other they need to be. Having said that, there's also additional policies already in place that limits the location of liquor stores near sensitive uses like schools and parks. So I think those are on policies that will be continue to be incorporated in the new general plan.
Sure, and I can just add a little bit more to that. So while you spoke about parks and schools, it also includes distance separation from churches and residential
That's right.
developments. This is all actually within our municipal code as well. So it's something that our decision makers have to look at in terms of density, crime, and concentration of those facilities, whether it be off sale or on sale locations as well. So we have quite a bit of detail in regards to how we permit and approve alcohol establishments within the city, not just a liquor store, but also even a restaurant.
Okay, we have another question follow-up from earlier. It says, earlier I asked you a question regarding the zoning designation used for storing trucks. You said that it can be industrial. Can you clarify if it is M1, M2, M3, or M4?
So that's a very good question. Those are the actual zoning districts. And I think we can maybe circle back with you after this meeting with the right answer to that question. I don't have that information with me right now, unless Carlene, you had that off the top of your head.
I don't have it off the top of my head, but I don't know if we have their contact information where we can reach out. So it looks like we do, and we can get you that answer and connect you with a planner who can answer any additional follow-up questions in regards to zoning on that property.
Okay, and that was from Santos Aleman, so we'll mark that and make sure that we'll follow up there. We do have one hand raised, so if we can go there, and then we'll go back to, we have a couple more questions. For Zakiya Anson, you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and give your comment or question?
Yeah, I actually have two questions. The first is, are there any plans for some of the low density residential to be used for multi-home residential at all? So having more than one home or so on a property or parcel?
Zakiya, that's a very good question. First, the state has recently passed legislation that allows every homeowner, a single-family homeowner, to build what's called an accessory dwelling unit on their property. So and then secondly, you can also build what's called a junior accessory development, accessory dwelling unit. So a ADU or a JADU. And there are some limits to the sizes of those and how exactly they can be built on every property, but you are allowed to build those two types of units on a single family parcel.
Okay, and then my other question, I heard earlier, one of the people stating that you're working with the county to get some grants and everything for businesses. And with the new plans in place to build more businesses and everything, are you guys looking to allow some of the current businesses to take part in owning some of these new buildings that you guys are talking about, specifically in the village, to where they can own a building and also live there as well, for business purpose and residential?
So if I understand you correctly, you're asking if you can live and work in the same building, if that's a use that would be allowed?
Well, more so, are you guys going to have options for the current businesses that are in Palmdale to have more like a first dibs on being able to purchase these new buildings that's within the plans? Because I know a lot of times we have outside contractors and builders come in.
I see. So the general plan is not, the city isn't planning on building any of these buildings. Those will be developed by individual property owners.
Okay.
What we are doing here is establishing what can be built, what are the uses that are permitted. So, you mentioned earlier live and work in the same building. Live work is a type of use that is permitted in certain areas of the city. And it would allow someone to, say, live on the second floor and have their store on the ground floor, or if it's an accountant or an architect, they could have their office on the ground floor and live above or behind. So live work is a type of use that would be permitted in certain portions of the city.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I keep muting myself. We have two more questions. One of them is another follow-up. It's from Scott S. I appreciate the answers regarding the Palmdale dump, but is there any vision or goal for moving the dump to a more desolate area? That particular area of Palmdale has become a very crowded residential community.
That's a good question again, and I'll have Carlene chime in on that too. But before she does, I will note that the dump, when it first was built, was in that location it was a desolate area at the time, and since then residential uses have grown around it, and then now there are certain, obviously, as you're noting in your comments, that there are certain impacts on those surrounding residential areas that are not so desirable.
Sure, and I can add to that. As our current preferred land use alternative shows, we are proposing to keep the landfill in the current location, or I guess not move it somewhere else at this time. There haven't been any proposals from any outside individuals proposing to relocate it either. There are distance separations required by the landfill because it has come in now. So any development around it that is residential must be separated, or any expansion that they may propose in the future, if they did, would have to be separated a certain amount from any residential development to provide that buffer to kind of keep it a little bit more, I guess, further away from any sensitive user and residents.
Okay, we have one more question. Marcos M asks, what kind of oversight is there on the development of the general plan? In the previous alternative, the zoning for the East Side Wellness District was much bigger than it is now. The change seemed to only happen after public input pointed out the current zoning realities in the city. There are similar changes made to the East Side Education District. Does the public or city council go through the plan block by block before the general plan is adopted? Is the general plan just a formalized pipe dream?
Right now we are in the review stage for the preferred alternative, and we are looking for input from the public on the designations that are being proposed here. City staff has been considering the land use map carefully as well, as has the members of the General Plan Advisory Committee. The goal is to take all that input and share it with the Planning Commission and City Council and get direction from them before the land use plan is formalized. So if there are specific concerns or comments you have about portions of the designations proposed for any specific part of the city, this was a good time to share those with us. We'll share the email address where to send your comments, and you can also do it through the survey that's available to fill out as we speak.
And that is all the questions we have right now related to the general plan. And we don't have any hands up at this time either.
Okay. We've been receiving quite a few comments related to labor standards and the desire to, or the request to use local hire and to use a skilled and trained workforce in the city. And I wanted to acknowledge all those comments. I would like to note that the city supports employment in obviously employment growth in the city, and we also support local hire. The city council will consider the policies that go in the general plan about requiring prevailing wage or using contract labor for every project. So we'll certainly be sharing these comments with the city council and get their input into what policies get incorporated in the general plan. And Carlene, I know you had a couple of thoughts you wanted to share as well.
Sure. And then just, I know that sometimes thinking about the general plan is a little bit of a large concept to get our heads around. So just as a reminder, this is really a plan for the future to help incentivize people to come, live, work, and help build our community. So to speak to, if you build it, they will come, kind of if you plan, they will come as well. So I think that this is a good contribution to the community. We really support keeping our workforce here and employing those that are dedicated to our city and honestly the AV. So very excited to hear the comments and thank you for your input.
Okay. Are there any more raised hands, Celeste, or was that the last of the comments?
That was it. There are no more.
Okay.
Oh, actually, we just had, sorry, Simran, we have one more come in. It says, why is the aqueduct access behind Highland High School fenced off? It is a prime hiking area for residents near the school.
I think Megan Taggart actually might be able to either respond after the meeting or she might have some information to share now.
Sure, I can go ahead and hop in on that one. So there is currently a development going on in that area called Joshua Ranch, and they're proposing to construct about 500 homes back in that area. There will be some trails that go through that eventually connect from the P12 side where the existing houses are through that development to the other side. There will also be a trailhead so people can go and park and ride their bikes and walk and do all of that. The access to the actual aqueduct, that is property that's owned by the Department of Water Resources. So it's private property. The city does not have control over whether or not that is open or closed. So just know that even though access through that area is going to be interrupted for a while, there will ultimately be trails and areas for people to utilize and recreate.
And then we do have one hand raised from Lakita Dukes. Lakita, please go ahead and unmute yourself and then you can give your question or comment if it wasn't already covered.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay. That was my question in regards to the hiking area behind Highland High School. So you've answered my question and I look forward to it opening up again.
Great, thank you. Melissa reminded me that we skipped a poll question, so maybe we can circle back and run that now and get input on it. And those are tied to the education district, which was last element we discussed. Go ahead, Melissa.
All right, thanks, Simran. So we are launching our 6th poll now. And thinking back to the education districts that Simran described, we're asking the first question, which asks, do you agree with the vision for education districts? And your options are yes, no, or no preference. If you scroll down, there's a second question that asks, do you agree with the locations identified for the education districts? With the same options, yes, no, or no preference. We'll wait for just a few more seconds. If you haven't already, please submit your response and then we'll share the results with everyone. Okay, we're going to stop this poll and share the results. So in terms of the first question, agreeing with the vision for the education districts, 95% responded with yes, 3% responded with no, and 3% with no preference. Looking at the second question relating to the locations identified for education districts, 89% responded yes, 3% responded no, and 8% responded no preference. We're going to close that poll, and if you still see the screen, on your screen, you can click the X in the upper right-hand corner. We do have one more poll to launch tonight, so keep an eye out for that.
Okay, thanks, Melissa. I hope we're actually at the end of the presentation, but we wanted to remind everyone that we have an online survey that's available, and we would like as many residents in Palmdale to take the survey as possible. You can reach it by, and Melissa, if you can text out the link so that folks can have that easily accessible and they can take the survey right now when the presentation is still fresh in their minds. Or you can take it later. You can go to the project website at palmdale2045.org. The survey has information, or along with the survey is a briefing book, which essentially covers the presentation you heard today. But you can look at the materials again and then answer the questions in the survey. The survey will be open for another 12 days or so. I believe it's scheduled to close on February 15th. So there's still a little bit of time, but we would love it if you could take it right now, right after the meeting is done, so we have your responses recorded. Also wanted to share what the upcoming steps, next steps are for this plan. We are taking input from the community over the next couple of weeks, and then we'll be taking that input as well as the preferred plan, preferred alternative to the Planning Commission on March 10th at their regularly scheduled meeting, and then the City Council on the following, at their following meeting on March 15th. In the meantime, we are continuing the work we are doing with the GPAC on developing the goals and policy framework for the various elements that go in the general plan. And we are beginning to get started on some of the technical studies that we need to conduct for the EIR. We expect we'll be back to the community in early to late fall, early to mid fall this year with the draft of the general plan document for additional input, and then anticipate going to through the adoption process right after that. Melissa, did you want to run our last poll?
Yeah. going to pull this up now. And so we're launching our last poll, which asks, have you taken the online survey for the preferred land use alternative? The questions are yes and or no. I did just send out a link to everyone. The first link takes us to the briefing book, which is the document that we've kind of gone over tonight. There's also a link there in red text to take you to the survey, but that's also the second link that we sent out. That second link will take you directly to the survey. So if you haven't already, please go ahead and take that survey while it's still fresh in your mind. And we'll be sending out the direct link for Spanish as well. Okay. We just closed the poll and are sharing the results. So it looks like 61% have not yet taken the survey and 39% have.
Okay, well, the 61% who haven't taken the survey, you have your homework assigned. Please, please, please take the survey right now, right after we are done here, or while you're waiting for the meeting to close even. We would like your input. It's really important for the council to hear what your thoughts are, and so that the final plan that's adopted as a part of the general plan is truly reflective of the broadest cross-section of Palmdale residents and the Palmdale community. We still have a few minutes. If there are additional questions, we're happy to stick around and answer those. Otherwise, we would like to thank you again for taking the time today to attend this meeting, ask very thoughtful questions, and give us the feedback that you have. And we look forward to additional feedback that we get through the survey. And please help us spread the word about the survey. Please send the link on to your friends and family members and encourage them to look at the materials that are available online, and also provide their input for the future of Palmdale. And Colleen,
If I could just add
to the last word.
Yeah, well, while we still have most of the people on, just to say that a general plan really is the community's vision. And so that is one of the reasons why we're asking you to fill out that survey and to give your input and appreciate the conversation that we had this evening. It really is helping shape the future of Palmdale and helping the decision makers, which are appointed and elected by the residents of this community, make the best decisions for the community going forward. So thank you so much for your participation. It's been really wonderful, very thoughtful questions. Makes us very excited about being able to engage with everybody, even in this virtual manner. So thank you for attending. And on behalf of City Council, Planning Commission, our city management staff, we appreciate your time and your engagement in this effort.
Thank you, everyone. And please, please, please take the survey now. And have a good night.
You can end the meeting.